all the wisest people in the world that I see at the moment have one thing in common. They all talk about love. Love is everywhere. It's in us, around us, and it changes the world. And when we can see the world through the lens of love, it just starts to change.
Hey Damon, thanks for joining me on the How Change Changes You podcast. Very lovely to see you this bright and sunshiny morning. How you doing?
I'm doing all right, and you're right. It's almost like the beginnings of spring, but I'm not going to say too much in case I tempt fate. But yeah, thank you for having me on. I've been looking forward to this. Good to see you too.
Oh, fantastic. So before we dive into the change story you're going to be sharing with the lovely people listening or watching, I thought we would start off by you sharing a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what you do, that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you a little snapshot. So I live in Woking, near Guildford. I'm from Guildford originally. Spent quite a bit of time abroad in Dubai and Hong Kong in my younger years, 15 years in recruitment, and then bang, IPEC came along. A change came along, and that led me on to IPEC, and I've now been a coach for about a year. And I've got a lovely fiance who's in the room next door. Maybe she's listening, maybe she's not. And we're in our flat here in Woking. It's a sunny day. What else do I need to tell people that will help them get to know me a bit better? I sing and dance a bit, but I sing a bit on my YouTube channel. In fact, I need to do a little bit more of that because it actually makes me happy, even though I'm not the best in the world, but I enjoy it. So learned so much about myself over the last 2 years. IPEC's really helped me become more of me. I realised I had a lot of things I was holding on to from the past, and little lessons kept appearing over the past 2 years, mainly around confrontation and conflict and my fear of it almost. And I'm aware that I might be going off on a tangent here, but just what
that's what we love. Well, no,
yeah.
That's what we love. And you know me, I welcome tangents. I like to go the scenic route. So all tangents welcome, Damon. Thank you for sharing that. Just so people listening are aware, so IPEC stands for the Institute of Professional Excellence in Coaching, and Damon and I are actually part of the admissions team for the coach training program that we both attended. But I did 3 years ago. So that's all about, that's how we know each other. But yeah, no, as you rightly say, I think it's always interesting, isn't it, to hear of people's different stories as to how they came to coaching or how they came to, have a change happen. And then this opportunity kind of happens where you suddenly find yourself on a whole different path that you didn't even know existed, right?
Yeah. And one that could have existed now, and I couldn't think of any other way now, but beforehand couldn't imagine this one, but now it just seems like, well, this is the only way to be now. It's which makes me feel that it's natural then, so it must be right. I go by feel now instead of thinking too much. I still think too much, but I try.
Well, we all think too much, don't we? I think we're conditioned to constantly be scanning for the knowns, but I do want to pick up on just what you said, because I think it's a powerful point to start with, embracing the unknown, because to your point, and it resonated just what you said, I cannot imagine doing anything other than what I'm doing now. Yet a few years ago, I had this inkling, I had this feeling, but I had no evidence to suggest that that's what I would be going on to do. So I feel that my journey has been a peeling back of the layers of taking away the shoulds and the evidence-based, this is what you should do. And more, it's a feeling, it's like an instinctual, like, no, this feels something deep down here. It's not here. It's something in the body that goes, yeah, that way, do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. It's that feeling. And it's also the letting go of kind of judgment of, is this, as you say, it's the should bit, but right now, right here, what I'm doing is working for me. And maybe in the future, I'm sure I will adapt and something else will be working in a different way for me. And probably what I've got in mind of that, I just remember what you were talking about, the kind of coaching journey. And I know at the beginning, I didn't really know where I was going to go with coaching. In my mind, I had kind of also thought, oh, I'd like to get the best out of people. That's kind of almost a bit of a given with coaching, maybe, but I could have wanted to work with athletes at one point. I thought I'd have been to my cycling. I was like, oh, that could be quite exciting. But I didn't kind of quite know. But right now, that's not. I mean, if someone came to me and they're an athlete and then perhaps I'd work with them. But maybe there's better people out there at the moment. But right now, I've got a different mission, and it's one that's kind of connected, one that I can really relate to, and hopefully people can see that and resonate and relate to that, and see that's why I'm credible or valuable. Don't know whether interchange, whichever word kind of fits really, or applicable to, relevant to a person.
Yeah, no, I love that as a concept, because when you were talking, I kind of thought we are receivers, responders to life. And I think what I continually challenge myself with, and you probably get this as well, Damon, that a lot of the time I feel like the conversations I have with people, be that in a coaching conversation or otherwise, it's almost like reinforcing what I need to hear myself.
Yeah.
The irony, it's like the universe does have this sense of humor, I find. But it's, to your point, I think it's almost, we've been conditioned to kind of have a plan, have a goal, and know exactly where you're going. And I think through what you and I have shared, it's almost, no, just take that first step. And the next step will reveal itself. Trust that it will, and you'll feel your way. You don't have to have it all planned out, because actually then you limit your options if you do that. So it's kind of this hybrid with stepping forward.
Absolutely. And yeah, as you were saying that, kind of just reminded me of a coaching session I had yesterday, and also something I keep learning from my clients now, and helps reinforce to me is, actually I'm defining my kind of values, and your values are the things that kind of remain the same, whereas your mission and how you adapt to kind of what you're doing kind of changes a little bit. So it's all the way through this, it's about kind of, for me, a belief system, or a belief in myself, sorry, is probably what I'm really trying to say, trusting myself. So I don't have to worry about 2 years down the line. Look, it's nice to plan a few things here and there. I've got a wedding and things like that to plan for, all lovely things to do. But in terms of actually where do I want to be specifically with my personal development or my business, I roughly know where I want to go. But the most important thing is believe in myself, and then I can handle today, because it's the only thing that's real, is right here, right now, and be present in the moment, and believe in yourself, and you'll deal with it. And that's what I'd like to kind of all through my journey, just try and encourage other people to believe in themselves more. Oh dear, sorry. Let me just grab that.
As you grab a drink, absolutely. Frog in your throat. There's obviously energy. There was things to be cleared out your throat chakra there. It came up through you. No, I love that. I love that, Damon, because, I think, to your point, it is about like unlearning the way that maybe we've learned to kind of step forward into goals. And I think there is an element of, and we'll touch upon this about sharing your particular change story you want to share with people. But I think trusting in yourself that actually whatever life throws at you, you'll work it out, because thus far you have done.
Yeah,
and I think
you're here.
Yeah, so you're here, so let's enjoy it, because it's that age-old thing, isn't it, of the future's a mystery, the past is history. They call here and now is the present. It's a gift, because actually when we are future focused or past focused, we're not right here, right now. And I often think about that when my thoughts spiral off, just to kind of bring yourself back to your breath and back to center. It's powerful, but it's so simple, but it's very powerful.
It's really simple, and that's that kind of being present is something a client of mine reminded me of about a month ago. And he said, he'd just been focusing on being present in the moment. And it could have made me realise, I was like, oh yeah. So I learned something from him that day, and realised that what had worked really well for me during radiotherapy and what the challenges were during chemo. And I was like, oh, hang on a minute, I was really present back then. I can apply that again here. So learning something from everyone's a teacher and a master all at the same time. So teacher
totally
and a student, sorry. Is that
yes,
right?
yes. When the student's ready, the teacher will appear. Absolutely.
And
we're all both, right, in sharing. And that's why, you know, because we spoke a little while ago, didn't we, in preparation for this, and the reason, obviously, the inspiration for this podcast is just that, to actually be able to show up authentically, openly about a change that you're going through, and reflect. I think take time to reflect upon where you've been, what you've come through, and then also kind of the main things that you've learned, what you've strengthened about yourself. And I mean, already we've hit upon things that are fundamental parts of change, right? Which is to know that you can affect change, that you don't have to be at the effect of, and that you get to choose, you get to decide, because we all go through those waves of life. So let's talk about, for those who are listening, could you kind of introduce a little bit, talk around your change story that you want to share today, Damon?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. And well, all essentially I am. So where are we now? I have to think what month it is. So February the 25th. So just over 2 years ago, I had, December 2019 is probably easier to start with, just to kind of give people a bit of chronological order. After a few amnesia kind of episodes, I was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and it was astrocytoma type 2, low grade, slow growing, pretty big. They thought it had been there for probably 3 years, maybe even more. Who knows with these things? It was my right temporal lobe, and it meant that it was my non-dominant side, because I'm right-handed, which meant that it was affecting kind of temporary memory, which is why I was having some kind of amnesia episodes, which were essentially a form of epilepsy. And I'm now kind of on the epilepsy medication just to kind of keep it under control. And I've been very thankful that it's under control. But that kind of led me to the kind of sitting in a doctor's office, and then saying, well, after finding out I had the brain tumor, I then had to go back and have another scan, because like a silly Billy, I'd had the scan without contrast. And he said, well, I can see you've got a brain tumor. It's pretty big. I don't know what type it is. And that's when I kind of looked across him and went, you mean you don't know whether it's cancerous or not? And he's like, well, yes. And they don't use that word quite as much these days. They tend to talk about the grades, as opposed to saying benign, because mine was or is benign, but that kind of implies that it's friendly. And sometimes they're friendly, but then they go through the kind of change. But anyway, the results did come back, and it was low grade, slow growing, kind of grade 2, and operable on the premise that we can remove most of it, but not all of it. And we debulk, and then we monitor you and see, just keep an eye on him or her and see how they're doing, and if they're behaving or not. And hopefully the op usually stunts them, and they're going to stop growing after that. And so that kind of, it was a lot to take in, which is a bit of an understatement, and I'm sure people listening will say, yeah, that is a lot of statement. I had loads of family and support around me. When we got the final news of, well, it's actually slow grade, slow growing, sorry, I kind of felt, okay, I can do something with this. And although it was still pretty scary, it was like, no, but this is, and it was enough of a kind of kick to kind of say, right, your life's pretty good, but something wasn't quite right. I've been wrestling with a few kind of demons, not that anyone would have known, but just kind of wasn't quite in my groove, but so it moved me out of recruitment, or made me kind of think. I remember saying to my uncle I wanted to be a self-improvement guru, not knowing that Tony Robbins or Robin Sharma are actually coaches. All these people that I read their self-improvement books over the past 10 years, and had to keep reading them because it goes in one ear and out the other
Yeah.
quite often. And that could have set me on a path. And I was like, okay, well, after the operation, COVID kind of hit almost at the right time in such a strange way. It was also really challenging because it meant I couldn't go and see people and hug them and say, oh, give me a hug because this has been, I'm through it. But also gave me the space and the opportunity to kind of get into IPEC, get into coaching, take on that kind of program, and start kind of thinking about life a bit differently in terms of, okay, well, at the time, at that stage of the journey, I felt like, well, a bit of guilt because it was low grade and it wasn't, there are other people who are out there with, aggressive kind of brain tumors. I was like, oh, I don't feel I've really got a right to kind of say too much about, because I feel I've got off lightly. It's a weird kind of sensation. And maybe other people who have a low grade kind of brain tumor have experienced the same, that you kind of almost like, well, but at the same time, it could get worse. So you're like, so it's a weird kind of thing, but you could have taken the confidence out of it, saying, well, look, we're here now. So, but it definitely changed the way I started to kind of see the world. I became a lot more compassionate and forgiving, and realized there was a euphoria after the kind of 3 or 4 months of after the op of just relief, shock, horror, euphoria. I'm alive and can't quite believe that, but okay, yeah. Right, what are you going to do now? You've got to make this count. And it was just as COVID was happening, and where there was this euphoria, or not euphoria, but where there was that. You remember when COVID first happened, and we go out for a walk and everyone would say hello to each other because we're all locked in, and there was that real nice giving attitude, which I think has slipped away a little bit as it came over. But because life kind of carries on and we get caught up in the world again. So that could have happened. It certainly changed the way I saw the world, and set me on a bit of a different mission to kind of try and bring the best out of people. And but I didn't really know how I was relating to people. So I started IPEC and had this amazing journey. And I remember being in Mod 2 and Leanne challenging me. Leanne, if you're listening, I love you to bits, and I'm sure I'll speak to her soon. And I remember her challenging me, because because you're going to be challenged when you go through kind of coaching, because you start learning so much about yourself and realizing that, there's a behavior here that's been showing up for a while, and there's a bit of avoidance kind of going on here. But I wasn't quite sure where it was all kind of going, apart from I wanted to be a coach, and I knew this was helping me personally as well as professionally. So kind of helps, it's a kind of win-win. And I then kind of set up the business. Well, I graduated in March 2021. And in all this time, I've met the love of my life, who's now my fiance. And so there's so many things happened in 2020. It's like a lot of people were calling it the worst year of their lives. And I was saying, a life-saving operation. I met the love of my life, and I've changed my career to something that I just now can really buy into and say, I love what I do, because it's about sharing and giving and helping. We're all on this planet together. So let's just share the love and learn from each other. But I didn't quite have my kind of message. I'm not quite sure what I was really kind of, I just knew I wanted to help people, and that helping people actually helped me, because at the heart of it had to be kind of a bit of self-love, but I still wasn't quite there on that part. And so loop back into the story, each month, every 6 months, I'd have a scan to kind of see what's happening on with Terry. I think I'm going to write a letter to him recently, actually. I've decided just to kind of make friends
the
with
Tumor,
him.
are we calling him?
Yeah. I called him Boris at first, but then because I was like, I didn't really want him, but he's here and maybe he can do some good. But
See
now
where you're going with that.
But now I've just thought, Terry the Tumor, I'm going to write him a letter, and almost like we do with the Gremlin exercise, just make friends. And actually, this is part of me, and it's made me stronger. I didn't ask for it, but maybe I did in a certain kind of way, subconsciously, and the conditions were right, and it just kind of happened. But to get back to the kind of story, I guess we started my business, and it was a rocky couple of first months, as they always are when you start your own business. You have a few kind of highs and a few lows, and then I did manage to get an amazing contract with a company called Bliss, who are digital advertising wonders, and they invest in personal development. And their premise was, from the CEO kind of down, well, COVID's been crap for everyone, so as we want to invest in our staff as personal development. So they now have access to a life coach to do whatever they want. This is kind of highly confidential. It's not about work, it's about invest in you. Go and see whoever, whether it's Damon, Adapt and Flow, or whoever, someone twice a month, and blah, blah. And so that could have really helped my business. And I've had so much fun working with those guys, and I've learned so much from them, as hopefully they've learned from me as well, and learned to kind of trust in themselves. So that, as that started, I had this second or third scan, and the surgeon could have said, well, I'm not worried, but we something along those lines, but there has been a bit of growth. It's still slow growing and low grade, but we, here's the kind of the line. We're growing slowly, and what we don't want to do is it to kind of start growing aggressively. So we need to do something. I'm going to put you in touch with someone who can talk to you about some different options. So the amazing Simon Stapleton at St George's, thank you. He was my surgeon who, he's just such a lovely guy, and gave me so much confidence all the way through the journey. Then put me in touch with Dr. Liam Welsh, who's head of neuro-oncology at the Royal Marsden. So I'm getting access to all these amazing experts who are just looking after me. And Liam was just as open-minded and down-to-earth and lovely as Simon has been. But I could have got to that stage where there's lots of different kind of scenarios talked about, options, but I just went into kind of fear mode. I was about to turn 40, and I went from thinking, and I remember kind of getting back from the scan, sitting in the garden at mum and dad's, and Amanda and I had gone back there and just kind of having a bit of a cry outside, looking at my mum going, I just want to have kids and I want to see them grow up. I don't even know if I'm going to get to 50. Being kind of quite dramatic, but just had to kind of let it all out, and just wasn't sure, because I'd started writing this story. No one had said you're not going to get here. What they had said is we need to keep ahead of the curve. But I felt like I was at the mercy of everything else, as opposed to me being in control of anything. So for about 3 weeks, I was in fear mode. We decided a new plan. I was going to start the radiotherapy and chemo. And eventually, one of the catalysts might have been that I went over to see my uncle, Clive, who was, I love having my philosophical chats with him. And he's far wiser than he ever gives himself credit for. And he gave me a recommendation of a book called Radical Remissions, that his friend in the marina that he lives in had read, and it's all these amazing stories about people the 9 key factors that factors that radical remission survivors have in common. Out of the 9, one of them was diet, one of them was supplement, and the other 7 were spiritual, mental, purpose. All these things that we have so much. Well, 9 of them we have so much control of all these things, and it just got me thinking. I was like, oh, I'm I think exhausted from feeling so scared that I can't do anything, that I've now maybe exhausted myself. And that was the inspiration I needed to go, okay, you can take some power back. You can try and empower yourself. Start with changing a few little things, change your diet, look into kind of vegan. And I'm not strict vegan anymore, but I try and cut out a lot of dairy, a lot of sugar, things that kind of just try and have a bit more of an organic diet, with a bit of meat here and there, try and I'm not strict with it, get onto supplements, but then look at my mental health and spiritual health. And so that was enough, and got into Wim Hoff. And because I remember reading that book, and there was something in particular that I remember thinking, because I remember Astari in the group meeting the other day said, why did you get into the lady, Astari is a lady we work with at the admissions team. She said, why did you get into Wim Hoff? What's it that drew you to it? And it was essentially that I remember him saying that he could control the temperature of his body and dispel and make his body temperature rise whilst he was surrounded by ice, but also dispel endotoxin from his body. And I thought, if he's able to do that, we're tapping into the part of the brain that are kind of unknown. We're getting control back. Well, that means I can cure myself. And that was the parallel I drew. I was like, I need to get onto the Wim Hof method to start with. and that has phenomenally changed my life. It's just, I'd just encourage anyone to look into different types of breathing techniques, because it's free and it's easy and they're so beneficial. Breathing through your nose regulates and gives the nitrous oxide that gives you all the oxygen that you need, and carbon dioxide to kind of help your body be healthy. But Wim Hof's even better and amazing. Well, it's in my opinion. But I suddenly went from a place of fear, thinking I had no choice but just to listen to and be guided by the doctors, to kind of thinking, well, actually, I'm now a partner with the doctors and I've got all these choices. And I, like IPEC says, turn a challenge into an opportunity to kind of grow. And somehow I just had it in my head. I was like, well, I'm going to make a video diary out of this, and it can be my message. Be really good for me, but also I hope that it'll be good for other people to kind of listen and kind of grow with. And no matter whether they're going through something themselves like that, or just a different challenge, and they can say, okay, we can do anything if we put our minds to it. We really can do absolutely anything if we put our minds to it. And we've just got to create the right conditions. And it just started me off in this spiral, to the extent where I don't feel, I haven't got a weight on my shoulders anymore. I haven't got that kind of dread of, is it going to grow? It might grow. It hadn't by the last time we checked, but it might grow. And I just have to change something again and go, okay, right, well, maybe I'm not kind of loving myself enough. And that has been one of the biggest learnings. Love yourself unconditionally, even the things that you don't really want to admit to the world. You know, whether it's an argument you're having with yourself about the fact that you're annoyed because someone's rubbed you up the wrong way, and you let them rub you up the wrong way because it doesn't even matter. It's something that's not even important. But in your mind, you're having an argument with yourself. And the amount of times I would do that over the past 10, God knows how many years, just the power of self-love. So I just realized, starting to figure out, don't get me wrong, I haven't got the answer to life yet, but I've got a few answers that work for me. And they are just keep it simple, use the free tools, and we have so much more power and control. Control the thoughts we put on our head, accept some of them, release other ones, and create the world how you want it to be. The world is a perceptual illusion, as Bruce D. Schneider, the founder of IPEC, would say. And I now know what that means. It is, if you want to change the world, change the way you look at it. And I'm not scared anymore. There are going to be points in my life where I will be scared about certain things, but I'm not permanently scared, if that makes any difference, if that makes sense. So there'll be little things that will come in. I'll be, okay, I can deal with this actually, because I keep reminding myself what I'm going through. And I have to have mum and dad and Amanda to kind of remind me what you're going through, because life feels really normal again now. And almost to the extent that I forget and have to go, okay, I need to look after myself a little bit here. And maybe I do need to wallow some days. Like some days I will just have a day of like not doing anything at all and just going, okay, right, let it all out. Feel sorry for yourself a bit. And then, because I think I need to every now and then let it out and then go, right, okay, but look what you're doing. And if you can do this, anyone else can do it. And I honestly believe that. It's like Wim Hof kind of often says that he's not Superman, he's nothing special. Anyone can do what he's doing. And I'm in touch with him, which is actually amazing. And he's just so full of love. So anyone questioning whether Wim Hof is a good method to get into, the guy is just so full of love. When he found out what I was going through, I wrote to him and he got in touch and gave me his number. And occasionally we have a little chat, and he's amazing. He is like another lady, Anita Mujani, the Deepak Chopra, all the wisest people in the world that I see at the moment who are going to impact the world in such an amazing way. Yes. Have one thing in common. They all talk about love. Love is everywhere. It's in us, around us, and it changes the world. And when we can see the world through the lens of love, it just starts to change. It's amazing. And
amen to that, Damon. As you were talking then, thank you so much for sharing so openly and going back over these times. What really hit me as you were talking, and it's on your screen, I know your business name is Adapt and Flow, and you've embodied that. Ultimately,
thank you. Yeah.
That everything that you've told me, and that you continue. And I think this is why I especially love this story of change. because I think a lot of us are conditioned to almost believe that I'll be happy when is the way forward, of like, oh, well, if I just get there, then I'll just be happy. But what I'm hearing of what this ongoing journey, because it is, because you're receiving still treatment, aren't you, yourself, is that you're, and I love the way that you said it, taking the power back, realizing that, no, hold on, I do have choices. I can do something. And that this is, you know, a huge part of this that I'm hearing is this embracing and curiosity, this compassionate curiosity that a phrase that I repeat to myself and to others all the time. It's that curiosity, but with compassion, to say, well, let's see what's possible. And then just as you were talking with it all, it's just almost this light energy floods in, because suddenly it's not dark and it's not the end until it's the end, right? There's possibilities. And so it is this flowing that I am really getting a feel for what you're doing every day.
Yeah, and thank you. And I do need reminding of that kind of the adaptive flow. The name just resonated with me so much. I was like, I think that just has to be. I had the human professional at one point. I'm really glad I stuck with adaptive flow, because it just feels like you do have to adapt and flow with life. And if you do, and flow in particular, you know, let your energy flow, let your feelings and thoughts flow, and then hold on to the ones you want to while they serve you, and then let them go when they stop serving you. And not getting to being present in the moment. But as you say, I've got, by the time, so mid-July, end or kind of August time, I'll have finished kind of the complete treatment. And there is a part of my brain occasionally kind of thinks, oh, right, that's when life can start. That's not exactly the phrase that kind of comes out, but it's like, oh, I can't wait till then. Well, no, it's not going to be any different. Nothing is different about them. Right here, right now, I'm happy. So just live for now, because actually that's what's going to help me be tomorrow, be the next day, be the day after. And see, anything that's important is right here, right now, and not getting too attached on the future. And I've got a scan coming up in a few weeks' time. So the real challenge for me with this one will be to kind of say, well, I'm going to use this as feedback to how the treatment's gone, but how am I supporting this treatment? Am I spiritual? And I still don't really know how to describe what spiritual is for me. I just know it feels good, and it's me kind of connecting either with my breath or just being a bit still and listening and watching, and then letting go of the things I don't need to, and then having a good feeling. So this next scan will be, well, how can I just listen, be observant and report, and if it does come back and say, say it's grown a bit, I'd be surprised, but because I feel good and I know how I feel now, and I feel that's really important, and I genuinely feel there's very little negativity in me. Don't get me wrong, it creeps in every day. I have to get rid of it, and I create it quite often, because that's what as humans, we're quite good at kind of doing it, but the more and more I recognize it. But thank you for your kind of words and summarizing, and more articulately than I can quite often do it. But
well, you're welcome, and two, I say it as I see it, and to think, it is a feeling, and there was a few things that I wanted to specifically pick up on, because those listening might think, well, this all sounds amazing. How the hell is he doing it? So I wanted to, and this was a few periods, you said, a few chapters where you found yourself going into fear. So it must have been, I can only imagine, upon diagnosis, of like hearing the news, but then also, as you mentioned about, being in the garden with your parents and your fiance, again, you found yourself in that dark space. So just reflecting and looking back, how have you learned, or what are some of the things that enable you to come out of fear and shift into this more perspective place? How do you do that?
I didn't know I was doing it to start with, and I do know a bit more. I can feel my way through it a bit more now, but I was going to say acceptance, but I don't know whether that's the right word. And you mentioned earlier on the word surrender, and it's almost just like, oh, okay, well, yeah, why wouldn't I be scared? It's I'm human, and it's almost rationalizing. Okay, going to be scared. It's going to be scary sometimes, but then just I don't really quite know how to explain, but I think just letting go has been probably what I did do, or letting go, but that was fueled by a realization that there are other ways to feel, that I actually have a choice. I think choice really, that was one of the words that kind of came back in June, was the choice about everything, every single day. And I can be scared, but then I can choose how I react to being scared. And maybe that can start a neurological pathway that can actually create a pathway that kind of gets me to the point where I'm almost excited by a bit of fear. So I'm, as I say that, I'm laughing at myself, thinking, "Oh, Damon, have you just called upon the heavens to test you on this one?" But it is, I think it's the acceptance and the letting go, and surrendering is kind of almost a great word. When I know Anita Majani, a lady whose book I've recently read, Dying to Be Me, she kind of talks about a near-death experience, almost where she was really kind of, as she says, kind of riddled to the bone with so much kind of cancer in her body that she just kind of released and just surrendered to fear and went, "Oh, you know what, there's nothing more." And then almost when you do that, it's like the mind stops talking and maybe something else takes over, and it's just, well, I'm here now, I'm in this world, surrender. What is it? Something's going to look after me, and I do believe that, and it's we can tap into that, and there is just this energy out there, and call it belief, call it God, call it universal energy, call it love, call it so many different things. I don't know, but it was just a surrender to that of now just trust. And I do trust now. I trust myself, and I just trust
came through. Yeah,
trust in everything.
I guess what I'm hearing then is fundamentally that you came out of your head and into your body. So
yes.
out of, because a lot of the time we talk about, don't we, the head, and we're conditioned to make all of our decisions from our head, all of our, critical thinking, and we lose this connection between our heart center and our intuition, which is, it's funny. I had a story that just kind of plumped into my head there. Sadhguru, who's an Indian mystic, who's amazing, and he just has all of these amazing stories that he shares. But recently he posted something about that we are called human beings. We don't call animals like a tiger being or a wolf being or an ant being. And the reason is because we have the ability to be, i.e. to be in the moment. Many animals, the way that they are biologically wired is that they are reactive in nature, they are responsive. And whether that is absolutely true or not, it still resonated, because with what you're saying, with the surrender piece, and certainly Anita's story, which I'm aware of the book you're talking about, I think it's to come out of this attachment to everything having to be figure outable and everything having to have meaning. And I think that's the source of our rumination, and that's the source of our tension and then pressure and then constriction in the body. So what I'm hearing is that you come out of that, you first realize you're doing it, then you accept that, well, it's okay, of course I'm fearful. So you're saying, hello fear, you're here. That's what I'm hearing. And then you realize that you have the choice of, I can continue focusing on the fear, or I can shift into my body, let go, and just trust. And that I mean, that is, it's difficult, isn't it, I guess, to kind of say exactly step by step what you did.
Yeah.
But those are the fundamentals that I'm hearing.
Yeah, I think you've definitely hit the nail on the head there. And there's a lot of, there's almost allowing yourself to kind of go there. You can, particularly when you are scared, particularly if you're a bloke in particular. I mean, I haven't had this issue as much. I've seemed to be a bit more open about just having a good cry here and there. But just whether it's crying or whether it's something else, but just letting things out, you have to, well, I have to physically let them out. Otherwise they build up inside me. And almost acknowledging the fear, kind of going, I've probably said at times, I'm so effing scared, as I'm kind of crying. And then it's almost like you acknowledge it, and it then starts to have a little bit less meaning or something, you know, once you do start to go, okay, fear, right, you're here. Oh, you're a pain in the fucking ass. What am I going to do with you? Okay, I'm going to give myself a bit of time and space, and I'll figure this one out. Maybe not think too much about it, and as you say, come out of my head and go into my heart, and but also physically let go. Allow yourself to kind of go that far to actually, if you've gone through something really traumatic, whether it's a breakup, a life-changing incident, whatever, you know, illness, then it has a subconscious impact on you, whether and you know, you can be kind of very kind of positive on the outside and all this kind of stuff, but you've got to also listen to the person on the inside and let that out. And once you do let it out, then you can decide how you respond to it a bit more and take a bit more control. So the more you keep things balled up inside, find your own way of doing it. You know, I'm a crier when things when the shit hits the fan. Sometimes, and it works. I just know how to, almost a physical release. It's my body's way of saying.
I love that you're sharing that, Damon, because something I've noticed through a lot of the people that I coach, they'll apologize for crying in sessions. They'll apologize, and I'm like, why are you apologizing? Because this for me is an energetic release. And we don't apologize for laughing. Like laughing is an energetic release. So why isn't crying? And I often use the analogy with people, you know, obviously in IPEC and our coaching, we talk about emotions being energy in motion. And so we remove the label of it being bad or good, and just say that actually energy is designed to move through you. You can't ever kill energy. So you've got to keep it going. And I think there's something resonated when you said, when we acknowledge it, it actually wants just to be seen, felt, and then it will release. It's a biochemical rush. It has to go somewhere. So in the very nature, if we are feeling it and then going, no, and pushing it down, and then we keep pushing it down, it's going to create this pressure. And you kind of think about this in a cellular level. That heavy, dense energy you are constricting and pushing into your cells, then you're creating disease. So it makes total sense to me that actually why then we create physical manifestation when we don't release regularly.
And I love the fact that you brought the science into it, because it's completely true, and it reminds me of almost a fear, but a tendency that I have had and many other people might have, is to not, like, the acknowledging of it, of the fear or whatever it is the kind of the scary bit. And you, in your mind, the mind kind of says, I don't want to acknowledge you because that means that I admit you're real and that you then have power over me. Well, no, it doesn't. If you acknowledge something, you then have the choice about how you respond to it, but we need to kind of get there first. So my advice to anyone is acknowledge the fear, because it's not giving into it. It's actually just saying, okay, you're here, and now I'm going to respond to you. By not acknowledging it, it just pushes it down. And as you say, it's got to go somewhere, and it's going to come out in some kind of form, whether that's through frustration with a colleague or a partner or whatever, or who knows, you know, in a situation where you can't control it, and it's not as healthy or good for you, but you can get a bit more power back and emotionally intelligently express it in a way that's better for you, because energy does flow, and it needs to flow.
It does. It's not, you know, you can't stop the flow. It's like I often, you know, and obviously I'm a huge fan of Wim Hof as well, and I sea swim, so I go into the Northeast Sea and douse myself in the cold waves. And every time I go in there, and, you know, we'll do the Wim Hof breathing when we come out to warm our body back up, and every time I look out to the sea and I think, God, you can't turn the waves off. The waves never, ever stop. And so when I'm in the sea, right, and I'm in that shock kind of mode where your body is, essentially, getting, I suppose over time you do get used to it, but it's still shocking to you. There's no two ways about it. Getting slapped in the face with a very cold, salty wave, right, is just, it's a shock to your body. But I think on the other side of that is you get this huge endorphin rush, and that's fuel of being alive. I have somebody else who I've interviewed on the podcast, Chris Geisler, who does body mind practice. So he's a huge barefoot runner. He sea swims. He's very much into kind of more the rewilding of ourselves. He talks about outdorphins that you get. So rather than endorphins, outdorphins by being outside. Yeah. And I love that so much, because I think sometimes we need to just get outside. We need to be in the fresh air. We need to have vitamin D. We need to feel the elements to feel alive again. And I think we can, we're talking about fear. For me, when I feel fear, I associate it with being trapped in here. That's where I associate it, because we go on those neural pathways that are negative thought loops, essentially. And one of the things I've found very incredible for me is if I can just shift out of that and do something physical, be that cold swimming or yoga or going for a run or dancing insanely around my kitchen, whatever that is, that has the power to shift out of being stuck here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the phrase "break the cycle" kind of springs to mind, and it is break the neurological cycle pathways that can keep going round and round. And if you can, you can. We just need to give yourself a bit of time and space and create the right conditions. Whether that's changing your environment or whatever it may be, you're putting on a song or just going
Exactly. Just again, it's that release, isn't it? And I think what's clear of what you shared as well, Damon, is that you have such curiosity for, well, let's try this, let's try that. Like something you mentioned before, and I wrote it down, it's feeling your way through. I think sometimes you just need to trust somebody. I was listening to a podcast this morning. I've kind of always got some form of learning on in the background, but somebody was talking about, when you almost are putting pressure on yourself to kind of go, what's the next step? He used this very simple, very powerful analogy of, if you're in a hotel room and it's dark and you wake up in the middle of the night and you need to go to the toilet, you maybe can't, a part of you doesn't remember how to get to the toilet because it's pitch black. But what do? You feel your way. You feel your way along with your hand, and you don't ever, it doesn't enter into your head that you'll ever not make it to the toilet. You will, you'll feel your way through. And I just love the comedy, but also the simplicity of that. And you think, oh yeah. So whenever I tell myself that I can't do something, or that something, what is the plan? What is the next step? No, it's all right. Just feel your way through.
Yeah. I think we all need a good analogy every now and then, just to a bit of comedy, just to remind us life's there to laugh at. As Judi Dench says, I take my words seriously, but not myself. And
I love Judi.
Have a little laugh at yourself, have a laugh at life, and release some positive endorphins and some endorphins. And
I love that. So to bring it to a close, bring it home, Damon. And I love that you've just said that as well, because I think the world of personal development and the world of, diagnosis of health issues and that kind of thing, it can feel all too heavy sometimes. So it is important to bring some light in. So I just wondered if you had any closing thoughts, anything with where you are right now, how this conversation's helped you reflect on just how far you've come and that kind of thing. Feel free to bring us home.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And it's I love these conversations because they always help me just reconfirm what I have learned, and that's just kind of keep it simple. Remember that we do have so many choices available to us, down to even having, important to just have a little smile and laugh each day. Find anything, just be silly, because it is that, if you think of it from a health perspective, the more positive emotions we can release in our body, life's there to be had a bit of fun with. So there's so many free tools available to us. We have so much choice, so much power, with so much potential that we don't give ourselves credit and give ourselves the time and space. So what do we now? I need to have the answer right now. You don't. You figure it out in a minute, Damon. You figure it out in 10 minutes, in an hour. Maybe you'll figure it out in 2 weeks. It doesn't matter. You'll still just keep being, almost, and it's be present in the moment. A good client of mine said something recently about just being present in the moment and how it really helped him, because when he thought about the past or the future, you could notice there was a bit of anxiety attached to it. And it's not saying don't think about the past or the future. It just means make the majority of your focus right here, right now, because it's the only thing that's real. And the more we can live for today, the more we can live tomorrow, the next day, the day after, because we are, by living for today, you're creating health for your body almost. But yeah, we do have so much. We're not alone on this planet. I've certainly, a couple of weeks ago, I did have a thought where at the beginning of round 3, I always found the first week of chemo, I only on chemo for 2 weeks and I had 4 weeks off. In the first few days, I find it just a little bit challenging. You go into hospital mentally, and then you see all these kind of anti-cancer things and everything. And cancer was never mentioned at the beginning of my journey. It was more low grade, blah, blah, blah. But essentially, I have any brain tumor, as far as I'm aware. The way I look at it is it's brain cancer, but it's just slow grade, low growing. I'm not quite as afraid of the word anymore. And I'm learning to embrace it. And it's there's an Eastern saying that cancer is just they call it Western man's disease, which I kind of quite like and almost find it a little bit funny, but also a bit kind of like, it's just a word. It's a word that we need to, or we thought we needed to kind of give so we can help define things and help medicine and know what we're targeting. But to the patients, it's not actually that helpful. Just call it a lump, like Simon Stapleton said to me, you've got a glioma. Glioma is Latin for lump. So I appreciate I'm going on a little tangent again, but I just think we have so many tools available to us. We're not on our own. Last week, I did feel on my own. I was surrounded by lots of people, all the people that I love, and I was like, no one else is going through what I'm going through. And then I could have remembered that there are lots of people going through what I'm going through, and I did a bit of writing. And From Surviving to Thriving is my ongoing book that at some point over the next few years will come out. All my kind of learnings and my emotional journey. It's certainly been an emotional one, but we're not on our own. We are here together with each other on this planet. We can live and share and care, and it's kind of that simple. Life is so much more simpler than we've made it, than I've made it in particular.
Well, but it's the human experience, and what comes up for me, Damon, is that you are continuing to adapt and flow. You're continuing to do so, and you're continuing to integrate and embody the layers, because I know we've joked before, I say we're infinite onions and you're never done. And so these are just more layers, more parts of the journey of adapting and flowing, and you're finding more and more ways to do so and to share it, which is, so inspiring. So thank you for sharing your change story and for giving such powerful reflections. I've really enjoyed the conversation. For people who want to reach out to you, Damon, how can they do so? Where are you?
The best way is probably just www.adaptandflow.co.uk, and it's got all my social media links on there. I do a lot of videos on Instagram and YouTube, my video diaries, the chemical and radio and chemical journey and the power of positivity. So I just encourage anyone who's got an illness at the moment to have a watch of the diaries or connect with me on LinkedIn, YouTube, whichever way. And just you don't have to work with me. I'm not here about that. That's obviously my business, but I'm here to share and share my experience. And if it helps other people, perfect, because that's exactly what life's about. So connect
It
with me on
certainly
social
is.
media and see if anything resonates, and if I can inspire you to believe in yourself, because you've got this shit. We all have. It's
Yes.
we just need a bit of
Amen to that.
encouragement.
We do. And we'll make sure that all of those links get included in the notes below as well. So people can click directly and come find you, Damon. So thank you so much. Have a beautiful weekend.
You too. Thank you. I've really enjoyed it. So I was
good.
looking forward to this. Yeah.
Fantastic.